you. I'm often reminded, I often get introduced as the 70th Secretary of State, which is pretty cool. But I'm reminded its president is 45, so the turnover in my game is a lot higher. I'll be mindful of that as I speak. Thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward. I've got some remarks I'll make today, and then I'm happy to take questions on things that are on your mind. Thanks so much, too, for welcoming me to Iowa. We've got a great day here today. I'm so thrilled to be here in Iowa. It was great. We flew in last night, and believe me, it was a breath of fresh air to be out of Washington, D.C. And I know firsthand, too, how farmers are the backbone of America, how food security matters so much, and what you all do, the people of Iowa do, to help deliver that every place in the world. I spent a good part of my summer from my early years in my life at a place called Winfield, Kansas, at a family farm owned by my Uncle Jim. They were some of the most special times in my life. I remember the farm next door had a sign that said, "One Kansas farmer feeds 120 plus you." I'm confident if we drive down the highways here in Iowa, we'd see a similar sign, and I know it's true. George Washington has the famous quote that says, "I would rather be on my farm than be emperor of the world." I think he meant that, too. I want to talk about agriculture and innovation and our relationship with China. The two, as you know, are deeply intertwined. In 1980, a now very famous man, the then governor of Guangdong province, led the first ever Chinese governor's delegation here to the United States, and they traveled straight here, straight to Iowa. A few years later, his son followed in his father's footsteps with a visit here and struck up a friendship with the governor. Today, President Trump and President Xi deal with each other, trying to make sure that we get this important relationship right. Indeed, you all know Iowa's bounty has attracted many Chinese leaders wanting to know the state's secret for prosperity. But they haven't fully embraced the principal ingredient for Iowa's success, which is free enterprise and hard work, and the central idea of allowing individuals to have their own autonomy and their own dignity, and to lead and take chances and to take risk and to build their own businesses. Indeed, when the heavy hand of government dictates economic policy, we all know that productivity plummets. Innovation necessarily grinds to a halt, and people are much worse off. Only the free market makes life better in the long run. These market principles, The ideas of fair competition have made American companies the global standard for success and quality. Earlier today, I had the chance to visit the facilities of Corteva, an agriculture science company. It was remarkable. Companies like Corteva are an example of how economic freedom, innovation, risk-taking, a light regulatory touch can make American agriculture the envy of the world and dynamic in ways that no other country can potentially match. Think about what our businesses do. I ran a small business in South Central Kansas before I lost my mind and ran for Congress, now almost a decade ago. Gene editing has paved the way to eliminate diseases like corn blight. Companies like Quantified Ag have developed ear tags that use biometric technology to relay information about animals' health in real time. Others, like agrobotics, are using data from drones to help farmers make more precise fertilizer applications to boost yield. These things seem simple to us. They seem like common sense, but they arose out of the creativity and freedom that we have here in America. It has taken decades of ingenuity, which have enabled our farmers to produce harvests at levels the world would have been astounded by just a few years ago. This idea, this spirit of innovation, makes America what it is in the agriculture world, renowned for its integrity, known for its safety, and knowing, too, that we deliver reliable products each and every time. Indeed, when consumers eat an American steak, they know exactly what they're getting. Worldwide trust in the American brand is unmatched, from farm to table, as we might say. We also have the highest quality because of our free market system. Companies value their brand in a market-based economy and work to protect that reputation. Competition and choice cause people to play by the rules. Indeed, we have an entire ecosystem. Some of them are standing in the back. An entire ecosystem of reporters, investors, food safety experts, consumer advocates, and non-governmental organizations to keep an eye on our companies and our markets. And our fair-minded justice system punishes lawbreakers. The vibrancy of our agricultural sector shows that America's economic dynamism is not confined to Manhattan or to Silicon Valley or to Cambridge, Massachusetts. The American heartland is vibrant with economic potency. And good things are happening here too in Des Moines, no less than they are in Palo Alto. There are even wineries in the Hawkeye State, or so I'm told. So look, you're more similar to California than you want to believe. And President Trump's low tax, regulation cutting agenda is ensuring that our ag industry, along with all the other sectors of our economy, have room to continue to grow and thrive, that our countries continue to innovate without undue burden, that our farmers will be able to bequeath their rich piece of earth to their children. Unfortunately, China has taken a different approach. It has a state-led set of economic practices that threaten the health of the American agriculture industry that you've all worked so hard to develop. When we hear the stories of China stealing sensitive technologies, we often think of the technology powers that powers our fighter jets, our smartphones, and our medical devices. But Americans should know that China has targeted intellectual property and technology essential to farming, too. A few years ago, an Iowa farm security guard saw something suspicious in a field, stopped to investigate. He caught a Chinese national digging in the dirt, trying to steal genetically engineered corn seed that took years of research and development to create, and which had cost a lot of money to build. That individual later pled guilty to stealing seed from Monsanto, DuPont Pioneer, and LG Seeds. There's another story, a different Chinese national who stole hundreds of genetically engineered rice seeds produced by his employer. He stored them at his residence. He then passed the seeds to representatives of a Chinese Crop Resource Institute when they came to town. And it wasn't until the Customs and Border Patrol, our CBP officers, searched their bags before a flight that he was caught. And then, of course, there's the theft that takes place in the robotics and industrial technologies that form the backbone of our agriculture industry as well. Every time there's a theft of this kind, it eats away at the history, it eats away at the seed corn of the industries upon which you and your children and grandchildren depend. And you should know, too, it's not just big companies that suffer. As one farmer said, quote, "What no one seems to understand is that they're stealing from people like me. They're stealing the research that farmers pay each time they buy a Monsanto seed." IP theft, too, isn't the only problem that China presents. It's an economic model that has for years survived on protectionism, rule breaking, state subsidies. China denies American companies access to its market through tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, and they deny us the ability to compete on a fair and reciprocal basis. I've been around enough businesses here in the heartland to know we don't fear competition. But to compete successfully, you have to have a real shot. You have to have a relatively level playing field. And China's protectionism has for decades tilted the field against our farmers and agricultural companies. You should know, too, that American agriculture exporters aren't the only folks that are the victims of China's state-dominated economy. As Ambassador Branstad reminds me, it is the Chinese people who suffer as well. Think back to 2008, when tens of thousands of Chinese children got sick from contaminated milk and baby formula, with several of them dying. Even today, many Chinese travel abroad to buy baby formula, and Chinese expatriates make big bucks shipping it back home for profit. A few years ago, Time magazine investigated fake Chinese eggs and came up with this list of scrumptious ingredients: resin, starch, coagulants, pigments, sodium, alignate. I'm going to stop there. Today in China, counterfeit goods, counterfeit products, the overuse of pesticides, reprocessed cooking waste all remain persistent problems. And just as China has guarantees of human rights written into its constitution, China boasts plenty of food safety laws. It's not about writing down one more regulation or one more rule. But enforcement is weak or non-existent. And as we see so often in socialist countries, the prevalence of corruption in China's state-commanded economy frequently allows this kind of fraud to go undetected and almost always unpunished. And even when it's uncovered, the incentive to cheat remains unchanged. The Chinese people deserve better. The good news is this: help is on the way. American producers and Chinese consumers will both be better off. The outcome of President Trump's trade negotiations currently underway will pay dividends for people in each of our two countries. The president's taking a very hard line on stopping the theft of intellectual property. For our ag producers, President Trump is fighting to level the playing field to which I earlier referred, so that there will be greater market access for each of them. This is great news. But opening up markets for new businesses isn't just a pet project related to China. It's one of the core missions of the State Department, which I lead, and it has been for more than 200 years. But we're doing so today with a renewed focus. You know, many Americans look at the State Department and wonder what it does for them. They see the Secretary travel to far-off places, and they ask the question, are Americans the first client of the State Department? You should know that you are. For one thing, we have 1,700 economic officers serving all across the globe. A huge part of their work on behalf of families in Iowa or Kansas or any other state is to create opportunities for American businesses to sell their products abroad. And when it comes to international commerce, I guess you could say that the art of diplomacy goes hand in hand with getting deals done. This brings me to a quick detour. I would be remiss if I didn't spend a few minutes. Economic diplomacy is certainly a central mission of what it is that I do. It's one of the State Department's many missions. But if you're an American looking for one of the most rewarding, challenging careers possible, consider the U.S. State Department. There are opportunities to represent the American flag in everything from counterterrorism to ensuring food security to fighting human trafficking. My colleagues are incredibly proud patriots serving all across the globe. They're smart and they're mission-driven. The State Department has spent a lot of money and energy over the years to make sure we have a diverse workforce. I want to make sure that we have people from the heartland serving in the Foreign Service as well. We need that geographic diversity. Our mission is, of course, to represent all of the American people in all corners of the globe, so the makeup of our workforce matters. And if you want to keep America safe and strong and advance our values, we've got great opportunities. You can literally change the world. Okay, infomercial over. But please, you or your kids, come check it out. It is a great place to work. It is a noble calling. The people who work with Ambassador Branstad and I are true patriots serving our great nation. I'll close here. Under President Trump, our diplomats have been especially busy opening up markets around the world for all kinds of American agriculture. And along with our colleagues at USDA and the Trade Representative's Office and the Department of Commerce, this administration has opened up a path for dairy and poultry to Canada, lamb and goat meat to Japan, beef and pork to Argentina, poultry to India, lamb to El Salvador, beef and poultry to Morocco, eggs to South Africa, dairy to Turkey, and handfuls others. We hope that the EU, too, will soon lower its trade barriers and grant expanded access for American goods. Where China is concerned, new market access must come, and we must do so in a way that creates systems that are enforceable. It doesn't do any good to sign one more agreement, one more document, if a mechanism to enforce those commitments that the Chinese make to us doesn't have the capacity to create a set of rules and processes that are enforceable. One final point of importance related to keeping the American ag sector prosperous. Our abundance has always been an incredible blessing to the world. We have to extend that legacy. The promise of land and rich soil stretching into the horizon and a better life drew innumerable settlers to our shores. After World War I, Herbert Hoover helped quarterback our efforts to feed tens of millions of Europeans, a project that depended substantially on American foodstuffs. And in the years immediately following World War II, American farm output again helped feed a continent ravaged by war and continuing to suffer from the threat of famine. There are many programs today, you all are part of them, that help satisfy and provide food for the world's neediest. That need has only grown and will only continue to grow. Today, the United States is the world's #1 exporter of food and ag products, and our generosity is legion. Our USAID bought 1.4 metric tons of food from American farmers in 2017 and fed 70 million people across 53 countries. But frankly, the greatest blessing from American agriculture isn't due to any government program. It was the work of Nobel Prize winner Norman Borlaug, the founder of this great institute. He devoted his life to feeding the world's population and bringing it out of starvation and malnourishment. And by breeding new species of wheat that yielded once unthinkable harvests, it's estimated that he helped save billions of lives. The explosion of agriculture productivity he triggered became known as the Green Revolution. You should know that it was an American revolution and an American innovator who did that. I am confident that the next billion and the billion after that of people who will be fed around the world will also be fed by American innovation, creativity, and hard work. And we too know that to do that, we have to make sure that American businesses and people prosper. Earlier today, I met with some young people in the FFA. It's an impressive group. I remember my time representing South Central Kansas. These are great young leaders of the future. They have firsthand knowledge of agriculture that is unparalleled any place in the world by young people. I mentioned earlier the farm in Winfield, Kansas. It's where I spent my summers. It's now where we go for family holidays to just hang out and get away. There is in that farm on the fence on the southwest corner a Century Farm sign, 100 years in the family. It's proudly staked right there. It took hard work by my Uncle Jim to keep this family farm in the family and to continue to make it prosperous and successful. I get that. America's State Department gets that, and President Trump gets that as well. I know this. Farm life is the best of what America has to offer. We're committed in the administration to making sure that those young people that I met with today can pass on that noble way of life to their children. I hope that God will bless them. I hope that God will bless each of you in Iowa and the United States of America.